Welcome back to another episode, guys, to the Devoted Creative Podcast. Today we have a special guest, as always. And for the purposes of our audience, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hey, so I'm Seb or Sebastian Whyte, and I am a director.
Yes, you are. And where did it start? Did you get into it? Again, I remember straight away.
I mean, you could go all the way back to, when I was a kid, and me and my brothers would kind of imagine films and act them out, and then kind of plays with, put on plays for our parents to sit through and watch and whatever. But really, I guess it started. I started as a photographer.
One of us.
Yeah, and I was, I was taking photos of bands and, mostly musicians and stuff, for magazines, and it was on film, showing my age a bit.
What was your first camera? Do you remember?
Ooh, it was Pentax.
I had a Pentax.
I had a Pentax. I used to love that camera. It
was
so simple and basic, and I think I was someone for that simplicity. I used to love that.
Yeah.
Just basic. You had to set up aperture, you had to set up speed and all of that, but it was after that it was no complications.
Yeah, you just got into it.
Yeah.
Fair.
And then I got to admit, when digital came around, I was really kind of like, wow, this is kind of too much technology for me at first. But, because I was just like, Also, I couldn't afford the digital cameras because, and that was one of the reasons why I moved away from photography, was because it was becoming, back then I was doing a lot of stuff for free, and it was becoming too expensive. Buying all the film, processing all of that, and you wouldn't process in terms of getting it. You would just get the contacts, and then you would kind of, maybe go into, there was Photo Fusion in Brixton, and go and print up some work down there. It became too expensive, and then I was a runner on certain shows. For Channel 4 and stuff like that, and that's when I started moving into the world of film and TV, because I knew from photography I wanted to tell stories, but I also knew that I wanted to tell the story before the frame and after the frame.
Fair.
But what photography teaches you is you can take a picture like that, but that picture has a different meaning if you go like that or like that, or, so if you crop it.
The frames matter.
Yeah. So, it teaches that it teaches you light and all of that. But it teaches you how to tell a story in one frame.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, I'm greedy now.
I want more.
I want the frame before, the frame after.
Yeah.
So then eventually I kind of worked my way through every aspect of, I guess, film production, from being a runner on the set, which I think is a great start for anyone. It's like you just get to talk to all the different departments you watch, you see.
Can learn.
Yeah.
Really learn.
Yeah. And then I went into post for the same reason as I sort of stopped taking photos, was because of, it was just, I had to eat, and it was kind of like I was freelance running, but I wasn't getting as much work, and I was like, okay, so I'll go and work in a post-production. I started running there. Then I learnt the other side, which is, I kind of did a backwards journey into it, because you then learn how to put the ingredients together.
Fair.
Right? So I always use that cooking analogy. You go out and you do the shoot, and that's buying, that's the shop. You go and buy the food.
Do you tend to have an idea of what you want to make when you're going to get your ingredients?
Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get these herbs, and I'm going to, you're like, you know what you want to cook. You're like, it's going to be delicious. And then when you get to the table, like to the kitchen, you're like, oh, I forgot that, or I've cooked that for too long, or something like that. So you have to improvise.
Overcooked it a little bit.
But that's where it becomes a film. Yeah. That's where it becomes the sort of, and you take it to where you want to take it. And you have to, a lot of it is kind of problem solving, as you know.
That's my favorite part of it.
It is, right?
I think ultimately
what I've learned speaking to other photographers and filmmakers is a lot of us, essentially it all comes down to two things actually. A love of problem solving, almost a compulsion for problem solving, and an absolute passion for telling a story.
Yeah.
I think those two things combined, and maybe you throw in some curiosity as well.
Yeah.
Wanting to know about someone else's life and what goes on there.
Yeah.
I think when you combine those three things, you really get, like, that's where you get people that like to be behind the camera rather than on the camera.
Yeah,
But do you mind if I dig a little deeper back? Like, what was it initially that made you pick up a camera even? Like, where did that desire to want to capture a frame, where did that come from?
Again, it goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, we had, I think it was like a Kodak Brownie, which is a box camera, basically.
Yeah, my mum got me one of those.
Yeah, right. That's where it starts. It literally starts there. And then you are freezing time and it's like, oh, this is amazing. And it was just, it's such a good kind of habit to get into, just, you know, and you're telling stories and you're out with this. And it was, you know, okay, like it was never cheap, but it was kind of one of these things. And it was so precious because it's not like today where you're taking
1,000 images a day.
And then there's this kind of yearning for perfection. I've just seen The Substance, so I'm kind of, there's this yearning for perfection. And so people will, you'll take, you know, and I am rubbish at taking photos on an iPhone. Yeah. I'm terrible at it.
You need a viewfinder.
When I was doing the thing, I was like, but so you know, when you're doing it and you don't see the result until you get it processed, you're a bit more precious with what you're doing. You're setting
you're
it up.
more considered.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, you've got to stand there. And you know, as kids, you're like, okay, no, and it's that. And then there is no, okay, let's do it again. You'll be like, no, I've only got like 12 exposures left. Yeah. So, you know, and then we've got no more film. So we'll have to wait until next week or whatever to get the film. So, you know, it's that. And that also helps you kind of compose your shot. So, yeah, so it started there, basically, you know, playing with my brothers and Brownie cameras and yeah.
And so how did you get into the running that led into the filmmaking world? What was your opening moment?
Okay, the truthful answer is I think I was dating someone who was working in the art department, and I was also studying at the same time. So I was doing cafe work, but I knew I wanted to get on a set. So it's always about the people you know. So that helped me get into being on set.
I ask because often people say, when you ask, you know, how did you get involved? People say I started running, but for, you know, a younger person or even an older person who's listening to this who wants to work in film and has never had a chance to try, when you hear get into running, what does that mean? Like you said, it is building a relationship with somebody who can open a door for you, I guess.
You know, people often say, and it's become a cliche. You know, it's who you know, and that for people of color or marginalized, it's hard because you don't have a legacy of that in this country. You know, so then it's a case of you could get a chip on your shoulder and say, yeah, but I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I've had that. I've done that, been through all of that. I'm like, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. Or you could just be proactive and find the people and pester them in a nice way.
Yeah, right? Respectfully.
Yeah, respectfully, right? And, you know, show initiative and enthusiasm and just get in touch with people. I remember when it was photography, I would go into newsagents and then, you know, and I'd have my notepad and I would be looking through the column at the start of the magazine, and, you know, where everyone's listed, and I'd be taking down names and numbers. I'd go through, you know, and take the names and numbers and whatever. Now it's easier. You just get online and
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is
Instagram.
LinkedIn is great, man.
Yeah.
I was all, no, LinkedIn. What does that? And then I started kind of listening, and then people get back to you, because I was like, nobody gets. Maybe a few people. If you only do 5 and they don't get back to you, then that's going to be your impression of it.
Yeah.
But if you like just hit up everyone, and you'll get some responses.
A lot of people struggle with rejection and the idea of rejection. And actually, a really good friend of mine, she wanted to go to an event, and she said, "I'm not going to go because no one wants to go with me." And I was like, "Who have you asked?" She's like, "Oh, everyone's busy." I said, "Who have you asked?"
Sounds like me in the cinema. I go to the cinema by myself all the time.
I love them, man. Like, I would fully go by myself, but she likes to go. She likes company.
Yeah.
And so when I asked her again, "Who did you ask?" She said, "Nobody." I said, "Well, you've assumed everyone is busy because you don't want them to say no, not because they've actually said no." And somebody might be sitting at home thinking, "Oh, I wish someone would ask me out." And she did, and someone was available, and they went, and she had a great time. But I think it's very much the same thing in people seeking opportunities. Because it means so much to you to get through that door, you almost don't want the rejection, because then it's like, "Oh, I'll never get in."
Yeah,
But that's only one no out of a possible 1,000.
That is, in the creative industries, you have to have a thick skin, and I kind of hate that term because we're all so fragile, because we kind of we do the work, and look, even like your Scorseses and your Spike Lees and all of that, they're not gonna. They're going to be fragile. They're going to be like, "Oh, how did people?" They read the reviews. They do. So it's they want that validation. They want people. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it, and they're putting it out there.
Yeah.
So you get quite guarded with stuff, and I think rejection and dealing with that at an early stage of your career, and not. It's hard not to take it personally, because it is kind of.
It's you, right?
Right.
They're saying no to you.
Yeah. So they're saying, but I think you just have to kind of process it, use it to fire you forwards, or ask for feedback. Literally.
I think that's critical.
Yeah.
I've definitely not done
feedback.
that enough.
I mean, I remember when I've asked for feedback for certain things, like a couple of years ago, I put myself forward for a mentor program on Directors UK. And the first time I put myself up for it.
To be a mentor or to receive one?
To receive a mentor.
Okay.
Which I think is another thing. Everyone should get a mentor. That's like, it's really good for you in terms of like having someone who's, and my mentor at the time, I think I was older than her, but she's further forward in her career.
Yeah.
Right, and in areas that I want to get involved in. And I got rejected the first time I put myself forward, and it was for the same person. And then I got the feedback, and this guy called Sean at Directors UK, it was brilliant. He gave me this feedback, and next time I applied, I
took it all on board.
Line by line. I just, bullet points. I was putting bullet points down, and I got it. And that might not always happen, but I think that feedback helps you,
Also to humble yourself, to be like, not be defensive when you receive that feedback and the rejection.
Yeah.
To go, actually, how can I address these points?
That's super important, because we're in a collaborative industry. So you're always, you work with clients. You're always working with clients, whether it's a producer, a studio, an agency, whatever. You might be like, well, we're going to do this. It's going to be like, blah, blah,
Yeah, you've got a vision.
Right. I got the vision, right? It's going to be like, yeah, we're going to have this happening. And they're like, yeah, nah. And you'll be like, okay. But you, just get paid. Get the work done. And then take your vision and do it somewhere else. Someone else might want that vision, you can always kind of store ideas and then come back with them. So, don't be too precious about it at all.
Yeah.
My younger brother, when he was like painting and stuff, he said, I used to give away my art all the time. It's like, just don't get that precious about it. And I thought, that's a kind of...
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Because actually, even think about it, in terms of like filmmaking and filming stuff and taking pictures, I would easily say that, and I could confidently say it right now, Hopefully I live a nice long life. But I'm pretty sure that by the time I leave this world, 90% of the stuff I've ever shot will never be seen. Ever. Just because I've not put it out there for whatever reason. I've just shot it out of curiosity, maybe. Just for my own eye, I've captured a frame that I liked. And I never thought about putting it anywhere. Most of the stuff we create, no one ever sees. Because I feel like as somebody who holds a camera, it's the thing I was talking about, curiosity. You've got that urge to capture something. So it is, I think if I could take something away from what you said about being less precious and just putting stuff out there, because you don't know, it might inspire somebody, it might spark an idea and someone goes, oh my God, where did you capture that? Maybe we could work on this thing together. I feel like putting things out there is one of the stumbling blocks I've had for a long time. Putting myself out there and my work out there. How have you dealt with dealing with that? Because I mean, you've just put something quite big out there that is your name. I would love to know, how you've experienced that and dealt with that.
Everything's kind of on you when you're putting something out there and you've got like, it's been commissioned. You've got like this show, it's been commissioned. You've got it's for it's for everyone, but it's you're doing it for your culture. You're doing it for, Black History Month and whatnot. And so there's that on you. And you're like, I don't want to let people down with what I'm putting out there. At the same time, you have your vision and you have your idea of what you want. And I think I came into that project and I was really fortunate with the production company, and the commission at the time were really open to my ideas. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you come into a project and they're just telling you what they want. Yeah,
you arrive. Here's the show,
and we want you to do this, and then it's like, well, okay, you're kind of like a gun for hire just to make sure that people are in the right. You're like ushering people into the right spaces.
Just for the audience who may not have seen the show or heard of it or haven't read the introduction yet, they just wanted to listen so eagerly. Seb created an amazing show that I was privileged to see the screening of in Soho, celebrating Black cinema. Could you just tell people a little bit about the show, where they can catch it, who's in it? I think it'd be good to give a little intro.
Yeah. So it's called Celebrating Black Cinema with Naomie Harris,
who I love. She's incredible.
She's amazing.
And I've never seen her in that kind of a role before.
She's never been in that kind of a role before. And it's essentially Naomie and 4 guests, and they're discussing 4 films each, and they're celebrating some of their favourite Black films. And the guests are Lashana Lynch, Oti Mabuse, Trevor Nelson, and Adrian Lester.
Great choice, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Great selection.
Yeah, it is a good selection actually, because it's kind of like, there has been the debate about why there's no directors involved and stuff like that, and it wasn't a choice not to have directors. It was just we directors were busy, the ones that we went after anyway. But also, I think the benefit of the choice is it's relatable.
I mean, every single one of those people is a household name.
Yeah.
And a household face. Even if you don't know their names, I think everyone recognises their face in British television, because the show is on Sky TV. Prime time. You need people who are going to be drawn to the show, who are going to draw people to the show, Yeah. And then on that, I mean, it's through the hook of those 4 people, and Naomie as well, of course, then you get into some really, really interesting and emotive conversations around Black cinema, around Black identity even, which I didn't expect going into it. Like, how much of influence did you have in that, and how much of that was part of the conception of the show itself?
I think that was always going to happen, but I really wanted it to happen. I wanted it to be like when you are younger and you've got a kind of show which you're always quoting or something, or a film or whatever, and you it's part of growing up, but you can't take your environment away from that, because it's part of, you know, it's part of your experience growing up, the music that you hear, the clothes that you wear, whatever. So there's a time and a space and a moment that you attach it to. And I think it's important to attach those to, and a lot of the things in the choices have little nods and hints to those sort of moments and times in our lives. So I always wanted that to be something that was touched on, with the knowledge that this is a film for everyone to watch and experience. But then I think as human beings, we've all got that. So whether it's just, okay, this is black culture speaking, but then, you know, it doesn't matter. You could be white, you could be whatever. And there'll be a song, a film or whatever that takes you to a moment in time. Yeah. And I think that's what we were doing here.
And how did you get involved in the film? Did you approach it at the production stage? Were they approaching you once it was already conceived?
I was approached out of the blue. For me, it was out of the blue. I mean, I'm sure they kind of...
So they thought of a few people.
They kind of... And I got a phone call, and it was Claire Thomas, who's at True North, and she called me and said, "Oh, we've got this project. Would you be interested? Naomie Harris is going to host it." And I really tried to kind of sound calm cool. And
I might be around.
I'd be interested in hearing more. I'm like, just say yes.
You're off the camera. Like,
what the hell's wrong with you? Like, don't play it cool. Just yeah, I'll take it. So
I mean, how did you even come up on Claire's radar? Have you worked with her in the past? Or?
I did a project, another Black History Month project for Andy Mundy Castle's Doc Hart's production company and UK TV. Okay. And it initially started as interstitials for Black History Month for Dave, or it's You and Dave now, isn't it? For that channel, and You and Drama. So we had these two sets of interstitials, and because we went deep into sort of research, that's what I do. But it was great that like Andy comes from a documentary background, and we were both like, yes, research. And so we did the research, and we were like, no, we're going to have all these questions. And so we did our interviews with all of these 4 interstitials that were really only supposed to be like
a couple minutes,
a minute at the most. But we sat down with all his talent, and when we were filming, like I think the second day, I was like to Andy, I was like, why don't we make a documentary?
Yeah, we've got enough material.
Yeah, and so he approached UK TV, and they did, and that became a documentary. It was called Just Jokes, and there was a sort of series as well called Black on Screen, which was for the dramatic actors, and so we had 2 sort of programs out at the same time, and I think they probably saw one of those and thought, let's get in touch with Seb.
I mean, that for me feels like a lesson in putting your stuff out there, because you shot an hour of content, you needed a minute of it.
You know what?
You didn't have to make a show out of it.
No, but I hate I love the democratization of digital. Right, and I'm not like digital versus film, blah blah blah. You know, I don't even. You know, I think if you're talking about like the sort of look and feel and whatever, yes, film has a thing, and you know, but I love the fact that you can pick up a camera, you can go and make some stuff, right?
Yeah,
right.
They're everywhere.
But what has happened, and we've touched on this earlier, is that you get a lot of waste. Like you said, 90% of your photos
at least.
But that might only be because you just never going to, it's like you've chosen 2 or 3 and that's it. And that always happened. Like even with film, you get a contact sheet and be like, okay, this is the best one. And the good thing about contact sheets, you go back years later and you're like, actually, this is dope. Why didn't I use that? And then you revisit
completely overlooked it.
Right. I don't think that happens that much now with digital, because you just get rid of you delete it, or you just like, you know.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, you just delete it. There's no contact sheet to go back to.
And it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's not saved anywhere. It's gone. You're like, no, that's not good enough. And it's immediate. And so you don't get, and maybe some people say, but storage is a thing. It's always been a thing. But I just think, you know, with digital, we waste so much. And I guess that's the benefit of socials now. And I'm one of the things with celebrating Black cinema with Naomie Harris, the film, was that it's like there's so much stuff that I think, we could have put more out on social. Like Lashana says some really great stuff. Like Adrian says that. Trevor spoke on. The only person who didn't speak for that long was Oti, because we did her interview, including setup, in about 30 minutes.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
crazy.
that was crazy. We turned that round really quickly, but
that's impressive. It didn't look like you were rushed.
Yeah.
All the stuff we don't see on camera.
Yeah, you didn't see me going,
Actually, I'd love to know a bit more about that. The whole shooting scenario, the setup, the lighting, the venue was really, really beautiful place.
Yeah.
You shot in. Where did you shoot it?
That was shot at Riverley Ballroom, which is in Brockley, and it's a great venue. I think they shot Baby Reindeer there as well. It's an amazing venue, and you know the colours, the red pulls you in.
Really nice.
That's there.
It just feels it's like very nostalgic cinema feel to it.
Yeah. So originally we were going to shoot in cinemas, but then the acting strike happened and we had a rethink about it. And it's like, you know, with the cinema chairs, you're both facing that way. So they'd have to kind of awkwardly sort of, and that's never going to work. So, and there's no way people were going to look elegant in that situation. They'd just be facing, so it wouldn't feel like a conversational thing. And I think that, that was James Newton who kind of brought that to our attention, which is great, because we got some really, really lovely places, and we found some lovely places, and you know, you have the red velvet of the chairs, and that was something that I was really keen on getting, but then we managed to get that same feel and look in the walls and the environment of that ballroom.
What's your go-to place for looking for venues, or go-to even process? Because sometimes, like I might be just traveling somewhere or get off at a different stop, and I'm like, that's an interesting building.
Right.
Make a little note of it.
Yeah, but that's that. I think that's one of it is that, and you do a little pin. That's what. That's
Google Maps.
Yeah, you just pin it, and you're like ding, and you have these pins, and you're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
I think that's I think you look around, you get inspiration from everywhere, right? And I mean, my process usually starts with things like Shot Deck, where I'll just look for references. And then, you know, I'll be like, can we find somewhere like this? Or I'll have an idea in my mind, you know, brutalist architecture or blah, blah, blah. And my references I was fortunate, we had like, you know, quite a few people on the team helping out, looking for venues and stuff. And, you know, they came up with a few, and I saw, because we were all doing things on Zoom, so they put, you know, sent like a deck out or whatever with the venues, and I saw that space and I was like, I want that space.
Yeah, that's the one.
I want. And they were like, what about this one?
Nope.
No. And I was like, that one. And my DP had worked in that space before.
Okay, that makes it a lot easier.
And so he was like, yeah, I've worked there. I live around the corner from there. I was like, well, that's good for you, but I live like all the way across
other side of London.
I was like, but it was, yeah, it was that kind of thing for finding that venue. But I had references where my references were things like the Harlem Renaissance and stuff like that. And then once we got into the place, I had an idea. I was like, tablecloths and lamps and stuff like that. And
keep it nice and intimate.
Yeah, it was all supposed to be kind of conversational, kind of, I think my brother, he said, it just reminded me of like a busy restaurant, but then everyone just kind of disappears or whatever. And it was like that. And then there's the booths, which we did the Trevor
I love the
interview.
booths, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. And we just used the material around and the textures of stuff around to kind of, and then we'd put in a hint of blue light here or whatever, and so that would bring that kind of Harlem Renaissance feel. You got the reds, you got blue, you add a bit of cream or yellow in somewhere, and tungsten lighting. So it was, yeah.
You can see it was all. I mean, it's all very well considered. It didn't feel ad hoc, which is why when you mentioned being in a bit of a rush, I was like, nah, this looks like you really spent some time.
Well, we did, and that was, we needed it, but we had a day to go around and do the initial setups and the pre-light. So we went and we're like, okay, and we tested for about a day or half a day, but we still had to do like, I think it was 5 setups each day. We had 2 days. It was 10 setups over the 2 days, and so we'd do one interview. And then we'd set up in another space, something else, the screen, and then we'd have to clear all of that because we were shooting down the hall. And so we'd have to clear out all of the cinema stuff and then set up in one corner. And that was the last setup of the day. And it was, we were running behind. So.
And what did you, obviously, like as someone who watched it, it was a massive success. But what kind of challenges did you face? What did you learn on that project that you will take on to the next thing?
Drink a lot of water. No.
I went to the doctor the other day. She's like 2.5 litres a day.
Yeah, I've got a big...
necessary.
I was carrying that around, dress warm. It was cold in that place. I think planning, because you can plan, and then everything goes wrong, but at least you've got... you know what your objectives are, and then it helps kind of get the solutions, because something will always go wrong, and then because you know where you need to get to, you'll be like, so with the shoot that we did that we had to do in like 35 half an hour, I already knew the sort of questions that Naomie was going to ask. I'd kind of given her some kind of points to hit and whatever. And so then we could kind of improvise and go, okay, don't go there, or you're going to hit these marks and then we're out. So we kind of knew that we could get it. And I mean, Oti was amazing. She was amazing and great. Like that energy, I think, that she brought, knowing that we had 10-15 minutes to do the interview, she smashed it.
But she generally has quite a generous spirit about her.
Yeah,
and that comes
all
across.
All of them, like every single one of them were great. Like really, you hear about celebrities or certain people and whatever. At the end of the day, everyone's human, so you can have a bad morning and that can affect your day. But everyone on the shoot was great. Like the crew and everyone involved with it was great, to be honest, and that helps.
And what was it like working with Naomie in that capacity? Because obviously we're all used to seeing her on the screen as an actor, with lines and being a character. But in this, she was very much herself. What was that like, directing her to be herself?
Well, I mean, she spoke about that the other night, and before when we were prepping, we had conversations, and she was like, she was nervous. She was nervous, and like, she's like, I've never done this sort of thing, so and I was like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. But the main thing, I don't think you know, she said, yeah, you know, I was, you know, easy and generous to work with, but I think I didn't have to do that much. It was more. Sorry, did I just hit the mic?
Yeah, you're
good. A schoolboy error. So I didn't have to do that much. When everyone came in, it was already just calm, and it was already inviting an environment where, you know, and she's a generous, lovely person. She comes in, she says hello to everyone.
Yeah, she's an absolute gem. I've met her a couple of times. But every single time, she's like eye contact. She's got time for you. She's warm.
Yeah.
Every time I've ever come across her.
Yeah, really, really lovely and really generous, and just, you know, and she was 100% interested in the subject.
You could tell.
Yeah, and, you know, fascinated, and the conversation she's having, she's fascinated to hear and learn more from you know, whether it's Trevor talking about, and there's a connection, you know, oh yeah, they come from this part of London, da 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 da. So there wasn't much, because we set it up, and I think a big part of that goes again down to the crew and everyone who just made it inviting for all the contributors to come in, and they sit down and they're in this space where it just feels like they could be, you know, it could be like they're just in a living room.
Yeah, just a movie club.
Yeah. And so, you know, there's lights and stuff all around, but when they're in that spot, then they could relax, and it wasn't like a tension thing. It was just like, just relax, chill, do your thing, and it's, yeah.
What would your 4 films have been if you were one of the guests?
Oh, you can't ask me that. Can't ask me. I don't know. I can't give you 4 because I'll start going. I can give you. I'd say, you know, it would change every day, and it changes on. But like growing up, Blazing Saddles was a big one.
I love that film.
I mean, Richard
Brilliant
Pryor's
film.
like behind that. So you know, Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor together. Wow. There's a couple of Sidney Poitier comedies, Uptown Saturday Night, Killer of Sheep.
I haven't seen that, but I've heard it's a brilliant film.
And then there's things like Set It Off, which was just great. You know, you know, there's so many. It's like, you know, Moonlight is great. So many, and then you kind of like, well, let's just steal this film, because if it wasn't for a black guy, it wouldn't have got made. But Star Wars, you know, it's not a black film, but you know, it's like the contribution of black people needs to be heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many.
Mine would have been something silly. I would have had like something silly like CB4 in there.
Oh. Come on now.
Love that
film.
Iconic.
Come on. Yeah, all of that stuff. Because, I mean, that's what Blazing Saddles is kind of as well. It's like kind of that kind of, all of those, you know. And then you have the Wayans brothers.
Don't Be a Menace.
All of their contribution. You've got Robert Townsend. You've got Eddie Murphy, his comedy ones like Raw and Delirious and stuff like that.
Iconic.
I mean, there are so many. So
we talked slightly before the cameras rolled about being strategic in your process as a filmmaker, because a lot of people get into this because they're passionate about film or photography. I actually didn't. I never wanted to be a photographer. It kind of happened just through circumstance, and the fact that I had a curiosity about the technology is kind of what drew me in.
Yeah.
But how have you thought strategically about your work as a filmmaker, and rather avoid falling down the cracks of just being somebody who's in it for the passion and not ever making something that ends up on Sky TV at 9 p.m?
People who are doing it now, the younger generations, and I can say that with all respect because they are younger than me, are more strategic. But I think there has to be a balance. So I think, as I said, there's a democratization because you can shoot on your phone now. You can shoot on basically everything.
Yeah.
But I think learn the language of film. And if I again reference The Substance, that film has so many references to other films. It is ridiculously good on every single level. Like, it's a visceral film. But like, that's someone who's studied, you know, like they know their film, and it's not just from the last 20 years, they'll go back. So I think it might sound like I'm kind of preaching, but that I think is really important, because it's like you learn techniques and stuff like that. I think the strategy side of it, I think people are doing these days. I mean, they're just like, well, I'm going to attach myself with a brand. And it's different, because now, like what happened to the record, the music industry and record companies, you know, now you're seeing potentially production companies and agents and all of that, they're not as significant. So people are like, well, I'll just go to the brand and I'll work with them. Or I'll go with these people because they got in-house, so I'll go and do that. I took a while to figure it out, because you know, like in terms of strategy, you think about everything. Like you know, if I'm thinking as a black man, there's less than 3 million black people in this country. It's not like the States. There's nearly 60 million black people in the States. So, you know, it's a different
audience.
Look, right? So then you can say, well, if you're going to make a show, or you're going to make it has to appeal to everyone. Yes, you can make it and talk about culture and stuff like that. And I'm not, you know, you see examples of that happening, like Supercell or Top Boy, which is kind of a weird one because it's written by a white guy, but it's, you know, mostly about black culture. But it has to have that broad appeal, and both of those shows do have that broad appeal, which is you know where they win. So, and that's strategy. You know, I was speaking to an ad agency the other day, and I showed the film there, and you know, someone asked me, you know, has there been progress? And I was like, well, progress to me will be if knowing that we make up 3% of this country, we're not necessarily asking for 100% in every single department or whatever, but if we can start getting to that 3 or nearly 4 or 5% in every tier.
Yeah.
So CEOs, CCOs, you know, all of that, every tier, then we're hitting that. Then that's progress. Mm. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I've answered your question at all, but strategy is kind of just looking at that and then going, well, how do I approach this differently? Or what approach can I take? Do I talk to brands? Do I talk to talent?
Well, I guess what I wanted to know is, because obviously you are in the business of making films. You don't have a plan B. This is your job.
Yeah.
Your full career.
Thanks.
There's no escape now, mate. But I mean, so this project has been received really well from what I've seen. At what point do you then start thinking about the next thing, and how do you go about approaching it? How do you go about creating that space to make something new that gets received again?
I think you're thinking about the next thing whilst you're doing the current thing, and then there's like serendipitous moments and things like that. Like, you know, I'm you know, you work with talent, and then perhaps you might suggest, or you think of an idea and you're like, oh, well, I've got this idea, let's see, and see if something comes of it. So, you know, I think like you just have to, like, you have to always constantly don't go to sleep, right? You're constantly kind of like,
wake up.
You're constantly kind of like, you know, what can I do?
Yeah. But is that a hunger? Is that a drive? Like, what is that energy you're talking about or describing?
Well, you've got to eat, right? So you is a hunger, literally.
Yeah.
You kind of, you have to pay bills, and you have to, you know, so you, but then also there's part of like you that enjoys what you do, and you want to do more of it. Yeah, I mean, people, they say, you know, if you do what you love, then you never work a day in your life. And it's kind of true. But you are working hard.
There's a lot of legwork when you're doing what you love.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Because you're doing a lot of it for free.
Yeah,
especially when you're getting started.
Well, yeah, there's a lot, and I don't at all look. I did that, and I don't agree with it. And I think I also don't agree with people abusing. And it is abuse. They get people to do everything for cheap, and and I think that has to be addressed and balanced, because it brings down the value of everyone's work, and then it creates this chasm where you're either someone who's always getting work because you're a favourite of this and this and this, or you have to bring down your own price and just do work because there is not much work out there.
Yeah. I think that might be one of the very few issues I have with how accessible filmmaking and photography equipment is today. Because you have so many people who don't quite see their own value yet entering this workplace and being exploited, like you said, effectively being exploited for their talent and their passion, because it didn't cost them a lot to get in. And they picked up a camera for 500 quid or £1,000, which they've saved for. And now they've cheapened the whole process of making a film or taking pictures, because they still live with their parents, or maybe they're studying, and they can afford to take things on a cheap basis or a free basis. Yeah. And then how that affects people like us who do this for a living and we don't have anything else. Yeah. That brings down everyone's prices.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I'm not anti people being, ambitious and also going for it. I think
you want it.
I'm really grateful for the democratization of the art form, because it used to be only certain people of certain classes and whatnot that would get the work, and to an extent it still is. But now, as you said, there's this chasm where it's like, well, you have companies and production companies that are like, oh, we need to get influencers or this or that or whatever, or we need to be in touch with this generation, so they will only go to certain people of a certain age or whatever who will do it for cheap. Sometimes that's great, because sometimes you get some amazing stuff out of that.
Yeah, I enjoy seeing the other alternative perspectives.
Yeah,
that's what we get a lot more of.
I do. I think you see like a lot more stuff that isn't just appropriated and like kind of all of that. But I think we have to value ourselves as well, and also you put in the time like that. I put years into this.
Yeah.
So I got.
And that's what you're adding up.
Yeah, I got like. I don't know. I don't know. Like maybe loads of people could have done, the stuff that I've done or whatever. But I've kind of studied the craft to get to that. To like, oh, that's how I want that shot. That's how I want that lit or whatever. I've worked as a photographer. I know I have people who've worked like the art director and the DOP, they will know how much I've sent them with references. I've just, I've sent references. WhatsApp would be like, bing, 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 just photos and things. I'm like, yeah, I'd like it like this. Look at the light there, da, 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 da. Yeah. I'm not saying that people can't do that.
But that you've built a library, in your mind.
Yeah. And I can reference commercials from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, there's this and this and whatever. And so people are like, what? What are you talking about? And then you have to try and find it. But what I'm saying is that it'd be great if that was valued more, and it wasn't just exclusive to certain demographics.
I'd love to know what your thoughts are then, talking about being valued, because we live in interesting times generally. Yeah. But at a time when, if you take everything out of it, the accessibility to camera equipment, being able to publish yourself on platforms like YouTube and Instagram, the barriers have never been lower. And then you throw on top of that, for this generation, we now also have AI, which is wonderful.
It's great. I love AI. I'm not going to lie. People are like, AI's going to take our jobs. I'm like, it's a tool, but it's going to make shit so much easier for some things. I mean,
so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Then, how do you see it playing a role in what we do? Does it augment our process? Does it add to our process? Does it transform it?
AI.
Yeah.
It's another form of opening up and making things easier for people to get involved in things and be creative. Don't be scared of it. Be involved in it, especially as Black people or people of color, or we and women, and we all have to be involved in it, because otherwise we'll be erased. In terms of our input, will be erased from and it will be someone else telling our story. And you can see that happening in history now. I mean, we don't, people don't know about, maybe Sankofa or Isaac Julians or all the directors and artists and people of the 80s and the late 70s and stuff like that, who created a platform in this country.
Yeah.
And then broader than that, and I'd love to have touched on that in the film, people don't know about, African film or, the first studios in the States, Oscar Michel and stuff like that. So, it's a bit of a tangent, but I think AI is learning, isn't it? It's learning every day, and that means we need to be part of its education.
100%. Because if it doesn't have the data, it won't include us.
Well, then you start seeing Black Nazi soldiers like that.
Bizarre.
What kind of fetish nonsense is that? And it's like, and then in decades to come, people will look back on that and that will be a history.
Yeah, because they won't have the context.
Right.
That'll just be video and photography evidence of a past that they don't know about.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, there's things like, okay, so I haven't got 100 million budget, or I don't have, a whole crew that's going to build like a stadium or this or that or whatever. I can do some blue screen. I'm not big blue screen fan, but I can, you could put a blue screen behind a person and then build a world behind them. And that's, that sort of stuff you can do with AI, which I think it makes it more, it's just exciting, I just think, I think go into it. Don't run away from it, and be more scared of the people that know more about it than you do, than the actual technology itself.
Your approach is completely different to AI than it was to digital coming into film. Is that from you learning from that lesson, or have you just changed over the years?
I love digital. It was just too expensive when I wanted to get into it. So and that's why I probably got the hump. I don't know. No, I really like digital, because digital has made it easy, just to create stuff. And again, it's like, don't get me wrong, I love film. I think film it just looks lovely. Like it just looks lovely, but it is a longer process for things.
Yeah, I think the thing I love about AI, and I've been excited about it for a long time, actually, because I do a lot of research in that area, and the things that I've been seeing being developed over the last 5 to 6, 7 years now is potentially capable of bringing vision and creativity to light that we haven't seen before. And I think that's always what I'm looking for. Someone who's quite hungry visually. I'm always looking for visuals that I'm not familiar with, even if it references something from the past, but shows it in a new light. AI, I think, is allowing us to do that. And I think the generative stuff, when you can take a small set and make it landscape scale.
Yeah.
That for me is where the real magic is, because people who will never have access to a 100 million budget until they make that film can now start telling those kinds of stories that have real scale to them.
100%, because like we've got hundreds and hundreds of years of stories that we just don't get to tell.
Yeah.
We are the global majority, the people of color are the global majority. We don't get to tell, at least in these spaces, we don't get to tell our stories, even in context with our environment. And that means that we don't get to necessarily be, the protagonists in many stories and whatever.
Yeah.
You might get Luther every now and then and whatever, but it's not it always seems a bit uncommon, and then it always seems to be something that has to be registered.
Well, there are moments that you do see throughout cinema and TV where you have characters like Luther, or like Sidney Poitier's character when he smacks the guy back. There's a reason why that moment in your show, when they show that, it gets such a reaction, because in the context of that time, a man of color striking a man in response, to be fair, he was justified. I don't agree with violence ever, but in that moment, after being struck, to strike a man back, that was such a pivotal moment, because we'd never seen that.
It always gets the same reaction, because it always you
know what that slap means.
Because we're back there watching, and that's visceral filmmaking. You kind of are back in that moment, and you're like, you know what it's like. They've showed you, like, he's at the police station and the train station at the beginning, and they've showed you what he has to deal with, and it gets that reaction. It's great.
I think that's what I've enjoyed about the fact that you do have some of that throughout cinema and TV, but I think we will see more of it with the kind of work that you're doing, with the kind of work that people like John Boyega are doing, Daniel Kaluuya, all the kind of stuff that these people are using a platform that they've earned to spread different stories, to give us different perspectives. I think it's been a long time coming, but it feels very necessary right now. I don't know if you agree.
100, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm all for hearing more voices from everywhere, and just because if I'm completely honest, I think there's the common message at the moment is that we're in a downturn and then we'll survive or thrive or survive until 25 or thrive in 2025. And I think, personally, this is just me, I think there's a lot of dry stuff that's churned out. And that's one of the reasons why, I mean, if you look at some of the most popular things in recent times, they've been based on games. Yeah. Right? And because they're just not the same churned, like dry stuff. It's just, it's different. So I think that is a message saying we need more stories. We need different stories from different perspectives, and we've got to open it up a bit more. We've got to get more people in the rooms and do, writers' rooms and stuff with different cultures, different people from everywhere. And let's just see if we can reinvigorate storytelling and television and film again, because I think it's everywhere. I mean, you can't really criticize Marvel films for, they always, until recently, always make money, but at the same time, they're not even, there's no new stories there. No. And so you're like, but I know this is going to happen at the beginning. This is going to happen there. And so it's not that. And Marvel, like if someone offered me to do a Marvel film, I would do it. But I would hope that you could do something slightly different to it and kind of give it a little twist or whatever.
I mean, speaking of Marvel, while we're on it, I think seeing Black Panther, the first one, The second one, my God, why? But the first one was a really important moment in cinema for me personally, as a comic book fan, as a Black Panther comic book fan, as a fan of Chadwick. Seeing that on screen, I was really fortunate enough to be invited to the premiere as well. And it was in Hammersmith Apollo, which is a venue local to us, and I performed there. So like, there was a lot of things about that moment that were really kind of important and powerful for me. But as the credits rolled, I remember tears fell down my face. And I didn't feel that emotionally while I was watching it. And it wasn't sad tears. I was just I think I was thinking of childhood me watching a blockbuster Marvel movie with people that look like me on screen. And the last time I remember that happening with a superhero on screen, other than Hank, whatever that was, Will Smith film?
Will Smith,
where he's like a drunkard and a superhero.
Yeah.
That wasn't really aspirational.
No.
It's Meteor Man, Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
That was the last time I saw a superhero on screen.
Yeah.
That was like, that's someone
Wasn't that Robert Townsend again who wrote that?
Yeah.
Robert Townsend needs his flowers.
He needs his flowers.
Yeah, he really does. He's an important character in Black film, but never gets recognised.
Right. I feel like Ryan Coogler is maybe he's cut from the same cloth, telling really interesting, unique stories of people of colour from our culture.
Americans are doing it. Ava DuVernay, she's ridiculously good, man. Like how she's just, and on hard, they don't give her the money she deserves to make films.
Not yet, hopefully. That will change.
They need to pay her and go, have some money and make what you want, because she's really good at doing that. I mean, Black Panther was a moment. It's because it's so important, because like every X amount of years you'll hear, well, people just don't think black films make money, and they always make money.
Yeah.
And then you look at, the leading characters, Will Smith, how many of his films have made over 100 million? Like he's had that record of every film is making over 100 million. And then in the 80s to maybe mid-90s, it was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, and Richard Pryor before him.
Richard Pryor. And so, and so you've got these, in that whole era in the 70s, which then became known as blaxploitation.
Yeah, of course. Pam Grier.
Yeah, and the idea of it becoming exploitation was because you had white directors going, oh, these films are making money.
Yeah. We can cash in.
Yeah, and then, it's like Black Panther was important because it showed people that, we can have a black superhero, we can have a predominantly black kind of main cast. And it's going to do James Cameron type figures.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I loved especially about that, and I don't think a lot of people will have known, but preceding the development of that film, Ta-Nehisi Coates had been commissioned to do the kind of rebirth of the Black Panther comic book.
Yeah.
So I'd got back into Black Panther as a younger adult and enjoyed his kind of reimagining of those stories. And then to see it on screen, I was like, oh my God. With Ryan directing. It was just, the whole thing for me was it felt like a real important moment. And I definitely want to see a lot more of it. I think it's...
Yeah. It started to happen in the States. You started to see a telling of black stories.
Like a reclaiming almost.
Yeah. And I said, you had Ava. And then on the flip side, you've got Tyler Perry doing his thing.
He's killing it.
Doing his thing, which not everyone is into.
Not for me.
It's not for me, but you're
it.
like, Tyler Perry's doing it. And you would see that happening. And, it's difficult to be here and see that happening. And it is a numbers thing. Again, it's statistics. It's like strategic as well. You're like, okay, well, we haven't got that audience. We haven't got the 50 million, nearly, the 58 million, whatever it is, people to sell that to here. But then you start thinking, well, then why don't we start thinking about those audiences or thinking about, African countries and collaborating, and a lot of people are doing that, and that's great. You're seeing that. We are seeing that, and
that's a great point, because you got the numbers in Africa. There's a lot of African countries where there's a lot of African people.
African people, and also like, you know, really keen to make stuff. I mean, I mean,
Nollywood's obviously one of the biggest cinema industries on the planet anyway.
Yeah.
But seeing some of that more collaboration between filmmakers and producers in the UK and Nigeria, Ghana, where they're making some really interesting films in West Africa. I'm sure that's where I'm from, so I don't know much about what else is happening outside of those places.
And in South Africa.
But I'm sure there's a lot of filmmakers all over that continent where we could be making more connections there and finding an audience, because then you kind of reaching back to people's roots and telling stories about people that have come here from Africa. I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And
it is happening, and I think when you go back to that question of strategy, I think younger generations are like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make that connection and do that. It's exciting. I think, you know, we might see the same sort of, it's a warning to production companies and stuff, you know, in the same sort of way that, like, you know, the in the music industry, like, you know, the grime, and, you know, they were like, wow.
Yeah, they weren't signed it.
Fuck it, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh, we need a piece of that. We need a piece of that. And it's like, yeah, all right, you're going to have to pay for a piece of it. You know, or I think, you know, that happened in the music industry. I think it might have already happened. You know, I might be, you know, talking too late, but, you know, I think we're beginning, you know, the industry's complaining about a slowdown, whereas, you know, there are certain people who are influencers.
They're not
and
in
whatever,
the industry.
And
they're just getting on with it.
We are our own industry. I'll hire ITV studios out. I'm not going to work for you. I'll hire the studios out and do my own thing. You know, that's what's happening, because it's like, well, you left us out of the game for too long. So, you know, I think it's just getting on board that train, really.
It's huge. Cool. Well, I think we can wrap up there.
Thank you.
I've taken up enough of your time. Where can people find out more about your work and yourself? Awesome. Thank you guys for listening and watching. If you have any comments, please put them in the relevant sections. Please subscribe, tell a friend if you know anyone you think you might be interested in this episode and the podcast in general. I'd really appreciate a share. Take care. I'll catch you in another episode.